to extremes and people not talking about what the practical ways are to solve the issues that we face. And everybody wants to decide ahead of time. Oh, you're in that party, you're no good. Oh, you're in that party, Mike Bloomberg gave a speech in the spring to the University of Michigan. And he said in the 1990s, if you polled people, would you object to somebody, one of your children, marrying someone from the other party? 15% of people would have objected. Today, 35% of Democrats would object to their children marrying a Republican, and 50% of Republicans would object to their children marrying a Democrat. There's something wrong with that. I mean, the people are acting this way, and they're just living in these little, just listen to the same thing over and over, get angrier and angrier, instead of actually talking about it. So let's keep on going. Yes, sir.
In interest of full disclosure, I'm a blank, so I'm in the middle. Right? And I went to a community meeting last night across the street from this lady's library. And I'm also a 60-year resident of this town. My head exploded 4 times. Okay? I thought they were going to have to take me out in an ambulance. We have so many problems with MS-13, and my ear is to the ground on all of this situation. This lady lives in an area that she's got a problem because MS-13 is recruiting. The cops are reacting to this. It's not enough. We have drug problems. The heroin problem on Long Island is out of control.
Out of control. Absolutely out of control.
And it was unbelievable that I sat there and listened to people in the community, and it's a minority community, and they finally, because I think they've had enough, said exactly what they needed to say. There was 2 people in there that last week had gotten mugged and attacked by MS-13, and there were grandparents in there that they literally will look out their window to see if anybody's in the parking lot before they even step outside their door.
That's terrible.
To get in the car for fear. Now, the police are trying to address this, but my question to you as my congressman, what are you going to do? Are you going to support a wall? Are you going to support, doing more with the drugs and getting rid of this heroin and the gangs? Because the gangs, whether the people in this room realize it, we're in trouble in Huntington with the gangs. And that is a fact that was rolled out last night. And I tell you, there was a woman there, and these are her exact words, and it was translated. I've been in this country for 5 months. I've come from El Salvador. I am scared to live in Huntington. That's what she said.
First she said Brentwood.
And she said Brentwood, right.
I was at that same meeting, but
she said Brentwood.
I just want to piggyback on what he's saying, because my problem is with the immigration from a black perspective is that you're building a wall, but how and when did this get to be a Latino problem? Because we have immigrants from every nation. Yeah. So I just like to know, instead of us picking on one group, because you could do the same thing to me because I'm black, how do you get this to be an issue for just one group of people, which I think is totally unfair. And I was at that meeting last night. And
the MS-13 problem is Latino.
It's there, but I live in South Huntington, and they were talking a lot about Huntington. So even that divide made a big difference.
But so, all the numbered streets are a problem.
Yes.
They're a problem.
Yes. Because it's just, when did this happen? This is to the professor. How did this get divided into a Latino problem, and we just got to cut off Mexico? We'd have to cut off Canada. We'd have to cut off all these other immigrants that come in the country. So when did this happen?
Well, I think that there is, it's interesting that the 2 speakers, as you said, piggybacking on each other. I think
I was just at the meeting. That's what I meant.
Yeah, the first thing I think is that Latinos are the most concerned about MS-13 because if you look
I'm not concerned. I know there's an issue with MS-13.
But the right legal immigration is an issue for
that's what I'm going to
Oh, okay.
that's what I'm going to
Okay.
move.
Okay.
So I think that, if you look at the victims of MS-13, they're overwhelmingly Latino, and in fact, they're overwhelmingly Central American.
Okay, they're associated
So-
with gangs.
Yeah, and so what you want to be looking at is ways to have the Latino community cooperate with the police. You know, what we did in Nassau County was work closely with the police department so that people would go to the police, report these in real time, not be frightened and report them months later when they had talked to a
And I
police. We
think
want
that
people
came
to
out.
go to the police right away. It's been a persistent problem in Suffolk County because largely of police behavior during 2000, 2010.
It was policy,
It was
political
policy, it was political policy where witnesses were asked their immigration status. You don't want to be doing that. You want to create a situation where you don't have an underground where MS-13 can work within the community. You want people to come forward.
Yeah,
Now, in terms of-
but that's at the root of the problem is solving exactly what Mr. Suozzi said in the beginning. You've got to get this under control and have it defined, like this gentleman's saying. It has to be defined one way.
Okay,
You can't help all
this
these
is a
other
really
words.
important point, okay? We cannot lose, this is not really the purpose of tonight's meeting. I don't want to leave with this misimpression, okay? Local law enforcement, local cops cannot be the ones responsible for enforcing the federal laws. Because if you do that, then what happens is the people in the community become afraid of the local cops. They're afraid to go to them. So everybody, I don't care what population they're from, people that follow the rules don't like gangs. They're afraid of them. They have to be able to go to the cops for protection regardless of what their immigration status is. If people are afraid of authority, afraid of cops, they will go underground and they will seek support from other bad guys. That's the same thing that happens with MS-13 as it does with the Crips and the Bloods and with everybody else. People will go underground and look for help because I'm not going to get help from the authority figures. I'm not going to get help from the cops and the politics and the government. You cannot. So it requires, everybody in this room has heard the expression community policing. The concept behind community policing is that if a crime takes place, you can go to someone in the community that you know because you have a relationship with them, and you can say, what do you think really happened here? And they say, oh, I heard it was so-and-so just came out of jail, or I heard it was so-and-so just got in a fight with this one, or I heard they have community relationships. That's the best police work you can do, is community policing. It's quite frankly, it's the same thing going on with the Muslims right now. You have to have the Muslims be part of your team so that you can find out who the other guys who are breaking the rules are. So that's the concept of community policing. Your best intelligence as a police officer or as a law enforcement official or the CIA or the FBI is from relationships with other people that are following the rules. So you can't push people underground, and that's the really dangerous thing that we have going on. And it really was a policy out here for a long time that it pushed people underground.
Now, in terms of your question, I think it's really important.
But I got one more thing.
Sure.
We gotta support the cops to do their job, to go after people breaking the rules. But we have to make it so that the people that follow the rules feel comfortable going to the cops and working with them. That's, it's a real balance you have to have.
Yeah, I mean, I've had friends who were like young Latinos, U.S. citizens, and frankly, they've told me that even though they work good jobs, they're good people, they go to church every week. In their encounters with the police, they've been asked if they're gang members. I have never been asked if I'm a gang member. I have never been asked if I'm a gang member. Now, there are roughly 0.25% of immigrants on Long Island are members of gangs. Okay? So if you are an immigrant on Long Island, it is statistically most likely you're not a gang member. Not that you are likely to be a gang member, but if you're treated as though you're a potential gang member because you're Latino, or because you're Asian, or because you're Haitian, you're essentially alienating those immigrants and not just the immigrants, but their communities, which often include U.S. citizens and permanent residents.
What about statistically as far as if you're a Latino on Long Island, is it you're more likely to be undocumented or less likely to be undocumented?
You're most likely to be natural born U.S. citizen. That's the most common. Let's also.
Most Latinos on Long Island are natural-born citizens.
Most are natural-born citizens, but, you know, if we look at a group like the 526,000 people who are in the, or on Long Island right now, we say 70 to 80,000 of them are undocumented. There's actually 100,000 immigrants on Long Island who are permanent residents but have 5 years here and are eligible to become citizens. So that group is even larger than the undocumented population. It's a group that most Long Islanders don't even think exists. I think in terms of the issue of identifying Latinos as the problem, I mean, I hate to say it, but, you know, we're a nation of immigrants and we're a nation of immigrant leaders, right? We forget that sometimes. I mean, my family came here from Ireland, and Abraham Lincoln said, we need people like this. We need the Irish here. We need the Germans here. He actually printed his campaign materials in German, right? This is not something that's new. But about a third of his party said, we should ban anybody from coming here who's not Anglo-Saxon, okay? The 1924 immigration law, if you remember from your history book, you saw the KKK marching down Pennsylvania Avenue in full regalia. That was 1924 to pass the anti-immigrant law. That was against a group that wasn't considered white enough, Italians and Jews, right? So we've always decided that there are some immigrants who are good, and those are the immigrants who happen to be the most like the majority of people in the United States, right? So they may be English in 1850, they may be Northern European in 1900, but we want those immigrants, but we don't want the immigrants who are unassimilated.
This has
But you
happened.
can't decide who you want and who you
This has
don't
happened
want.
throughout America's
That's
history,
just-
okay? It's called the narcissism of idiosyncratic differences. Is what it's called. And it started out as the Dutch were here first, and the Dutch were against the English,
Right.
and then the English were against the Germans, and then the Germans were against the Italians. I mean, the Irish, I mean, and then the Irish, and before them were against the Italians, and then they were all against the Jews. And the blacks, everybody was always against the blacks.
Well, we
But-
didn't get a chance to even come over here. We got
So-
points, so that's a big difference.
So, and now it's the Latinos and the Muslims.
And still,
So this has happened throughout our history.
but it evolved.
No.
I mean, with the other
Other
population, it evolved, and you said, okay, maybe they're not so bad.
Well, but
But now,
let's
Part of it has to do
remember
with the
that the
assimilation that
racial,
people were talking about
but the
before.
racial difference also becomes an important marker, okay? Because a second generation Irish is not all that different from a fifth generation descendant of the Mayflower, okay? Whereas if somebody has a different color skin, black, so we see Haitians being particular focuses of discrimination, you know, Haitians being discriminated against all over the United
yes,
States.
yes.
Or Latinos who have a marker, you know, I will say Latinos, you know, we call them brown, I mean, they're really, especially from Central America,
He's one of a
indigenous
tan.
people. You know, these are people who are Indians,
Mhm,
and up until 1932, they referred to themselves as Indians,
mhm.
okay? And then there was a big massacre of anybody who said they were Indians, and then they said, we're Latin.
See?
You know, it's not a tan, it's not people being out in the sun all day and gee, I wonder why they're like that. I mean, if you go to the Cherokee Reservation, they look like Latinos because that is what Latino, you know, Latinos at least from Mexico and Central America.
Yes, 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 yes.
Okay.
I think you're missing something though, between the, whether it's the Italians, the Germans. If I'm stabbed or shot by a criminal, it's still a criminal.
That's right.
My family doesn't give two, whatever, who that person was. I'm dead or I'm in the hospital. So the crime that is happening, and we're seeing here on Long Island, and especially in Huntington, in certain sections, is crime. And if it's coming from one group, it's coming from one group. I can't help that.
But
You
what's
have to go after the crime.
But I can tell
but the
you,
group that's committing the crime are criminals, they're not Latinos.
Right, right.
correct, but,
Right.
but a large majority of them that we're having problems with are most likely undocumented or illegal, or whatever term you want to use, period. And that, you can talk to the inspector at that second precinct, and he'll say, that's correct. But they won't tell you that.
I thought you said they would.
No, I'm saying they won't tell the public.
Okay, who else wants to ask anything else? Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Suozzi, I just want to say one thing. I'm a registered Republican. I'm not happy with my choices on immigration right now. It's either a wall or open door, as far from my perspective.
Well, neither one of those are good from my perspective.
Okay, now I hear you talking about a specific community. And you did the right thing. You said that the law's got to be respected. The
Yeah.
law of the community, or the law of the state, or the law of the city, or whatever it is. What about the law of the land, as far as immigration is concerned? You talk about these gangs that are in here. How did they get into this country?
So-
Apparently they're
so I-
illegal.
I'm a very
You call
big,
them undocumented, I call them illegal.
I'm a very big
And they
believer.
continue their illegal actions. And that's forcing us to look at undocumented, the good guys, as going underground because they don't want to get involved with the police. It's like the police have to tiptoe around a situation that can only get worse.
It's going in a circle.
It's getting.
Okay, I'm a very.
I came here specifically to hear what, because one of your supporters there
Yeah.
told me that you get things done.
Yeah,
I voted previously for Steve Israel.
Yeah.
Why? Because he was a good councilman for the town of Huntington.
yeah.
No question about it. I thought I would do the same thing with someone that gets it done, not politics as usual.
So I'm a very strong believer that we have to enforce our borders. I really believe that's very important to do. Either enforce the borders or change the rules. But whatever the law is, you should follow the law. My concern is with these 11 million people, whatever the number really is, that are here now, that everybody's been in on this for 30 years. And you can't go and penalize like these kids that grew up here, for example, that have now played by the rules, have done everything right, have done well in class, have, graduated from, are speaking English, we're gonna penalize all these people because 30 years ago, nobody enforced the laws, or 20 years ago, nobody enforced
I think
the laws,
everyone
10
agrees.
years ago.
I think everyone agrees with that.
No, but you don't, that's
Everyone
not
agrees
true.
with that.
That's not
But
true,
you
because
have
there's laws
to,
that
you
are
have to
being
come up with
imposed.
something that will allow these children to stay here, okay?
Children are
Yet
already
address the
citizens though.
problem, yeah, and address the problem of the illegal aliens, whether they be the parents or whether they be the, whatever, or they be the
Okay, the
gangs or
kids are
whatever.
considered illegal aliens too.
Well, I would call them undocumented.
Okay.
I think that's the reason why I had the concern
You're
initially.
such a politician.
No, that's the condition why, that's the reason why I had such a.
No, I understand what you're saying. You're saying, because they weren't the ones who broke the law by coming over here in the first place, they just don't have the documents. So but listen, that's really important, what just happened, okay?
That's what the thinking
Because if people can actually talk to each other, okay, and not put everybody in a box, we can actually get something done, okay? We need more money for the local cops to go after the crime problem in the community, where those two kids were just killed, that was your community.
Brentwood.
We had,
No, that
no,
was-
we
no,
had
that
two,
was a
we had
Brentwood.
2 here and 4 in Brentwood.
Right. So I mean, the cops need support to go after that stuff. We should be encouraging that to happen. I think the idea of like speaking English or learning to speak English as being an incentive to getting a pathway would be a great way if people would talk to each other of trying to move the conversation forward. I think the idea of when you said, you're concerned about the borders and stuff like that, we should enforce the borders. There's no question about that. But we should be looking at these children. I mean, there's a thing called the DREAM Act, which is looking at these children that, they didn't do anything wrong. The kids didn't, a lot of policy in America started by thinking about children, okay? These kids have been living here their whole life, and they're living in the shadows. Remember the story I told in the beginning about the kid who was valedictorian in his class, top 10% in college, now he's sitting at home in his room. I mean, so I just think that if we can figure out how to have these conversations on a broader level, okay, this is a small thing as part of my campaign where I'm going out and talking to people in small groups like this. If I'm fortunate enough to become a congressman, I'll get Pat Young to come, we'll get an auditorium, we'll publicize it like crazy, we'll get somebody who's got a position that's more further, and we'll try and publicize it and get people to come and talk about this stuff. Because I guarantee that we could get the people in this room, and we obviously have people with different opinions in this room, to get to some agreement on some of these things. That's the challenge of politics and government. Nobody agrees on everything. It's impossible. But we cannot demonize people because they have a different party or because they have a different opinion.
Last night, you are correct, the community just wants the problem fixed, and they want the help that they deserve, especially in Huntington, because we pay 23% of the police bill, and we're getting about 10% of the services, okay? So, there's a major problem, but the people in that room were all, don't you agree, ladies? That they wanted solutions.
They want solutions.
They want
And the
answers,
same thing
and
here,
they
well,
want
why we're
solutions.
here, we want solutions.
What did you want to say, Matt?
I agree.
This goes back a bit, and I was living here in Huntington, but my understanding was that the gang problem up around the Jack Abrams School was terrific at one time, and that the police said they really couldn't do anything about it, so they closed the school. Now, coming as a city person, close the school, you close the school, instead of having the police call in the National Guard, you find something. You just commented that we have to find the resources to help the police. The police go away. Well, that makes absolutely no sense to me. So it's all kind of rhetoric if you don't have a police force that's going to go in and do the job. What police force says, I'm sorry, this block belongs to the gang. We sit at the end and we watch so that, you know,
That would be awful.
and they close the school.
Terrible.
Well,
You know, I don't know the statistics as well in Suffolk County as I do in Nassau County. Nassau County has the lowest crime rate in the United States of America for any community over 500,000 people. The lowest crime rate in the country.
And it's had one of the fastest rates of increase of foreign-born population